The desert held its breath. Night pressed close to the bones of the land. Coyote song drifted thin across the flats. A rider came slow along the creek. Black horse, black hat, a coat that shone dull in starlight like old oil. He tied the reins to a cottonwood root and listened for trouble. The creek murmured. The wind carried the smell of rain and iron. Her rifle cocked behind him. The sound was small. The promise inside it was not. "Do not turn," she said. He did not. His hands lowered from the saddle horn. Broad knuckles, scarred, calm. "You followed me for 3 nights," he said. "If you wanted to pull that trigger, you would have done it under the first moon." She stepped closer through mesquite. He could feel her breath touch the back of his neck. Warm, steady. "Say your name," she said. "Jonah Vale." Silence rustled like a snake through grass. "You know mine," she said. "Myra Keene." She let the fact hang there. A woman with dust on her boots and a storm in her chest. Her father had died under a red sun 2 months ago. Men said an outlaw took his last breath away and left his badge in the dirt. Men said Jonah Vale rode off without a word. Water flashed over stones, the horse stamped once. Somewhere far downriver thunder walked along the horizon. "You killed a good man," she said. "No, you left him to die." "No." She pushed the barrel to his spine. He did not flinch. He let the night speak for him. The cottonwood leaves rattled a soft hymn. A hawk called from dark air. The land seemed to lean closer, to listen. "Say something that makes me spare you," she said. "No words would save me if your heart is already set," he said. Her breath shook, then steadied. He waited. He counted the beats inside his chest. 5, 10, 15. She lowered the rifle a finger. Not enough to be mercy. Enough to be a question. "Turn," she said. He turned slow. His face caught a wash of starlight. Strong jaw, tired eyes. A line at the temple where a bullet had grazed, and time had healed the rest. He looked at the woman who had hunted him through 3 valleys in a ghost town. Brown hair, braided and half undone. A coat cut for work, not show. The kind of mouth that had learned silence. The kind of gaze that made men tell the truth or leave. "If I tell you everything," he said, "you will not like how it sits in your bones. I carry worse," she said. He nodded. He pointed with his chin toward the creek. "We should move from open ground. The thunder is coming. The flash will show us like candle flames." "I did not come here to share shelter," she said. "You came here for the end of something," he said. "Endings need room." Wind pulled cold across the flats. The first thin drops fell, slow and spaced wide like scouts of the storm. She hesitated. He walked to a shelf of rock tucked under roots and shadow. He set down his saddlebag. He did not reach for the pistol at his hip. He kept his hands plain as truth. She followed with the rifle high and her eyes higher. She had seen men play soft and strike hard. Her arms remembered the weight of grief. Her nights remembered the whisper that would not end. Her father had taught her to track and to trust the land more than her rage. She had done both. Yet here, near water and thunder, the rage felt older than she was, older than names. It felt like the land itself. Jonah knelt by the saddlebag. He opened it slow. He pulled out a canteen and a folded coat. He set the coat toward her and the canteen beside the rock between them. "I do not drink with you," she said. "You do not need to," he said. "Why did you leave him?" she asked. "Speak plain." "Because he told me to," Jonah said. He wanted me to carry something away that should not be found on his body. He wanted his name to end clean, even if his last hour did not. She stared at him through rain. A flash of distant lightning lit the tight lines around his mouth. He looked like a man who had buried more than he had ever owned. "What thing?" she asked. Jonah reached into the bag again. He took out a tin. Small, dented. He set it on the rock. He did not push it across. He let the space between them judge if it would move. "Open it," he said. She kept one hand on the rifle. With the other, she slid the tin near and lifted the lid. Inside lay a folded scrap of leather around a lock of gray hair and a note written tight and dark. The note was not to Mara. It was to a woman her father had once loved and left. Before her mother, before town councils and a badge and a house with a porch that faced sunrise. The words were heavy, with a kind of shame that did not ask to be forgiven. Mara read in the flicker of lightning. She did not cry. She did not look up. She set the note down slow and covered the lock of hair with the leather again. The rain sharpened. The creek swelled. "My father did not talk about the early years," she said. "Most men do not," Jonah said. She studied the man across from her, his coat dark with water, his breath quiet. Thunder rolled closer. The smell of wet dust climbed her lungs and tugged at a memory. Her father teaching her to ride without a saddle. The way he let her fall once. The way he lifted her after. The way he said a truth travels straighter than a lie, but both can kill a man if thrown hard enough. "You were there when he died," she said. "I held his head up so he could see the sky," Jonah said. "He asked me to carry the tin to a grave south of Willow March. Not hers. His. He said he was tired of the wrong story living longer than the right one." Her fingers softened on the barrel. A drop slid from her jaw to her throat and down inside her collar. Her skin heated where the water traced. She hated that she noticed the warmth. She hated that she felt safe beside the man she had promised to find and ruin. The feeling was not reason. It was presence. It was the way his voice did not hurry. It was the way his eyes met hers and stayed. "You should have brought the tin to me," she said. He nodded once. "I planned to, but you were tracking me. I wanted to see if your hands shook when you reached for the truth. They do not." He watched her. The rain braided their silence. Somewhere a night bird cut the air with a thorn cry. She thought of rage as a horse that had run miles without stopping. She thought of how a horse will keep running long after the danger passes, because the body cannot yet believe it is safe. She felt the run falter in her ribs, but then she whispered, "Oh, if you did not kill him, who did?" Jonah did not look away. "The same men who hired him to bring me in. They wanted the badge more than the man. They wanted a death that wore my shadow. They paid for the story. They did not pay to hear the end of it." "Names," she said. "I will give them," he said, "but not here. Thunder will bring company. Smoke and money love the same roads." Her rifle lowered to her thigh. Not surrender. A pause. Lightning unrolled across the sky. She saw how the flash carved hollows under his cheekbones. She saw the mouth of a man who knew the taste of iron and the taste of quiet. The storm pressed them toward the same shelter. The night pressed them toward the same choice. "We ride at first light," he said. "Willow March is a day and a half if the ground holds. I decide when we ride." "You do," he said, but you should know the men you want are moving. Money does not wait for grief." She lifted the tin and slid it into her satchel. She did it with care. She did it like a woman placing a candle inside a church she did not believe in yet. "Sit," she said. "The storm will pass faster if we let it pass through us." He sat. The coat between them gathered rain and gave off a little heat. They faced each other with the creek whispering and the thunder walking closer. They did not speak. They let the water drum out a tired song on rock and leather. They let the land hold both hatred and the strange mercy that comes when two stories lean toward the same fire. If this story has warmed a quiet corner of your heart, stay close. The night still has more to tell. Like, share, or comment if you have felt that same hush between danger and mercy beneath the western sky. Let your presence be known. Your voice keeps this fire burning for the next trail. The dawn came in soft gray. Steam lifted from the soaked ground. The smell of wet sage filled the air. Jonah sat by the dying fire, turning a comb between his fingers. He had not slept. The rain had carved lines in the dust, like the start of new rivers. Mara woke slow. Her hand brushed the rifle before her eyes opened. Instinct. Her hair hung loose, darker from the storm. For a moment she forgot why she had hunted him. Then she saw him by the firelight, still, quiet, and waiting. And it all came back, but softer than before. He said, "There's coffee in the tin if you want it." She didn't answer. She pulled her coat tighter and sat across from him. The silence was wide but not cold. "You said you'd give me names." She said, "I will. But the road is long, and they'll see us coming if we're careless. You think I'd ride with you?" "You already are," Jonah said. She looked at the horses grazing on the ridge. Her own mare, pale, restless, had stayed close to his black stallion through the storm. She didn't like what that meant. He stood and kicked dirt over the fire. "Let's move." The trail to Willow Marsh was a broken scar through red hills and scrub. The land still steamed from last night's rain. They rode without talk for an hour. Only hooves and wind spoke. She kept her distance at first, but the trail narrowed between rock walls where one wrong step could send a horse tumbling. He slowed for her, guiding his mount easy. "You should ride ahead," she said. "No. If something waits on the ridge, they'll aim for the front. So you'd rather take the first bullet? If it keeps you alive long enough to find the truth," he said. She wanted to hate the calm in his voice, wanted to call it arrogance, but it sounded like something else, something steadier. They reached higher ground by noon. The sun burned through thin clouds, drying their coats. Mara glanced at him when she thought he wouldn't notice. There was something unguarded in his silence. He didn't fill the air with talk. He just existed beside her, solid as the trail. They stopped at a ridge where the desert fell away in golden distance. Jonah dismounted and pulled a folded map from his coat. "2 men," he said, "Cormac Brand and Eli Pike. They rode for the marshal out of Santa Mesa. Thought bringing me in would make them rich. Your father tried to stop them. He died between them and me." Her jaw tightened. "You expect me to believe that?" "I don't expect anything. But I aim to show you." He pointed to the canyon below. A thin line of smoke rose near a stream. "Camp. 2 horses." "They're here," he said. "You lead me into this?" she asked. "No. I'm walking you to your father's truth. What you do with it is your own choice." He started down the slope. She followed, heart pounding. At the canyon floor, The sound of water and flies filled the air. Jonah crouched behind a rock, motioned her beside him. She saw the camp clearly now. 2 men, rough, laughing over a tin of beans. A rifle leaned against a stump. She whispered, "If what you say is true, let me shoot first." He nodded, quietly, almost like a prayer. She raised her rifle, breath steady. Her father's lessons came back. Sight low, pull slow, no rush, no fear. The trigger gave. The shot cracked the canyon wide. 1 man fell before his hand could reach the gun. The other dove behind a crate, firing wild. Jonah stepped out, moving fast, low. A second shot echoed. Dust jumped from the crate, and silence followed. The second man lay still. Mara lowered the rifle. The sound of her heartbeat filled her ears. She walked forward, eyes cold, boots sinking in wet sand. Jonah searched the body, pulled a badge from the dead man's coat, the marshal seal. Blood darkened its shine. They weren't law anymore, he said. They were just wearing its ghost. Mara stared at the badge, her throat tight. "My father trusted that seal," she said. "So did I," Jonah said. "That's how they fooled us both." She felt the weight of the rifle in her hands, too heavy now, like carrying the past itself. She looked at Jonah. The sun broke through, spilling gold across his face. There was no triumph there, only the quiet of a man who had been waiting too long to be believed. She said, "You could have killed me last night." "I could have," he said, "but that would have made me one of them." Her breath caught. The wind carried the smell of river mud and gunpowder. For the first time since she'd found him, she lowered the rifle completely. They buried the men before sunset. Jonah carved a small cross from mesquite and placed it in the dirt. Mara watched him work, the muscles in his arms moving slow and sure. When he finished, he wiped the blade on his coat and stood silent beside her. "You do that for everyone you kill?" she asked. "Only the ones who once believed they were right," he said. Night crept in. They set camp near the stream. The firelight flickered between them, soft and uncertain. Mara pulled her coat tight, watching the flames dance on his face. "You still hate me," Jonah said. She looked into the fire. "Hate's easy. It keeps you warm until morning. And after morning?" She didn't answer. The words wouldn't come. The silence between them shifted, no longer cold, just unfinished. He reached for the pot on the fire, poured her coffee into a tin cup. His hand brushed hers when she took it. Her skin burned where they touched. Too brief to name, too real to ignore. The fire cracked. The wind softened. The river whispered through stones. Mara thought of her father again, of how he used to hum low songs by the hearth, songs about storms and mercy. She wondered if Jonah had heard those songs once too. "You could leave now," she said, "ride out before dawn." "I could," he said, "but I don't ride from ghosts." She met his gaze through the smoke. Something in her chest turned over. Not forgiveness, not yet, but something that might one day become it. Thunder rumbled far away. The desert waited. 2 souls shared fire in a land that never forgot. If this story has stirred a quiet ember in your heart, stay close. The trail still winds ahead, and the desert has more to reveal beneath its silence. Let your voice be the spark that keeps this western fire alive for the next chapter. The morning came with a pale hush. Dew clung to the sage. Smoke from the dime fire drifted thin and blue. Mara sat with her knees drawn close, staring at the ashes. Jonah was already saddled, tightening the cinch on his horse, eyes on the horizon. "You don't sleep much," she said. He shook his head. Sleep invites dreams, and dreams don't know when to quit. She rose and brushed dust from her coat. The wind had turned east, bringing the smell of cedar and rain. Her heart still carried the sound of last night's gunfire. She thought killing those men would ease something inside her, but all it left was a quiet she didn't trust. Jonah handed her a strip of dried meat. Eat. The trail to Willow Marsh won't wait. She took it, more to end the silence than from hunger. He mounted and waited until she swung into her saddle. They started north, their shadows stretching long and thin across the flats. Hours passed. The land opened wide, the kind of endless that could swallow a person whole. Hawks circled high. The sky was too clean for comfort. Mara finally spoke. My father used to say the desert keeps no secrets. Jonah smiled, faint and worn. Your father was wrong. The desert buries everything. It just doesn't mark the graves. She studied him as they rode, the set of his shoulders, the steady way he held the reins. There was no pride in his posture, only patience, like he'd been walking beside guilt for years and had learned not to fight its weight. By midday, the trail narrowed through a dry gulch. The heat shimmered off the stones. Jonah raised a hand for silence. He dismounted, crouched low, and touched the dirt. Tracks, he said. 3 horses. Fresh. Friends of the ones we buried, maybe. Or men paid to finish what they started. She slid off her horse and readied the rifle. He motioned for her to follow into the shade of a ledge. They crouched close, dust brushing their boots. Voices carried from beyond the bend, rough, careless laughter, the sound of bottles clinking. Jonah's whisper was calm. Stay low. Wait for the echo. The laughter grew nearer. Then came the echo, faint, delayed by the rock walls. In that heartbeat, Jonah moved. 2 quick shots cracked through the canyon. The laughter turned to shouts. A third man fired back, his bullet sparking off stone near Mara's hand. She steadied her rifle, drew a breath, and fired once. Silence swallowed the canyon whole. They waited. No more sound, no movement, just the echo dying slow. Jonah stood first, scanning the bend. He returned after a moment. 3 horses, 3 men, all still. She holstered her rifle. Her hands trembled now. After it was done, Jonah noticed, but said nothing. He just looked at her, a quiet kind of respect in his eyes. First time shooting at men who shoot back? He asked. No. First time shooting for something that matters. He nodded once, as if he understood more than she'd said. They gathered the horses and supplies, tying the reins to their own. When they rode again, the trail felt heavier under them. By sunset, the ground leveled out to a wide plain. A single windmill turned slow in the distance, broken, its creak lost in the wind. They stopped by a dry well, made camp under the bones of an old oak. Mara cleaned her rifle in silence. Jonah poured water over his hands, the dirt bleeding away like memory. He asked, "You ever been to Willow Marsh before?" "Once. My father took me there when I was a girl. There was a fair, horses, music, people from every ranch for 100 miles. I remember lights strung over the saloon. I remember thinking the world was safe." Jonah fed the fire, small and steady. The light drew lines on their faces. "It's not safe anymore," she said. "It never was," Jonah said. "But sometimes, when the wind's right, it pretends to be." They sat quiet a long while, the kind of silence that starts to mean more than talk. Then he said, You asked last night why I didn't bring the tin to you. Truth is, I didn't think you'd believe me. Maybe I wouldn't have. You would have shot me first, he said. She looked into the fire. Maybe I still might. He smiled. A small broken thing that wasn't joy, just understanding. You won't, he said, because now you know what it costs to pull a trigger. She hated how right he sounded. She hated that the sound of his voice steadied her breathing. The wind shifted, carrying a chill. He stood, lifted his coat, and draped it over her shoulders without asking. The fabric was warm, smelled of smoke and saddle leather. You'll freeze before dawn, she said. I've done worse. She didn't move the coat. Didn't thank him either. The gesture was too human, too dangerous. He sat across from her again, elbows on his knees. Firelight caught the edge of his jaw, the glint of his eyes. Tell me something, she said, something true. He thought a moment. The truth is, I once believed I could live without forgiving myself. Turns out a man can't breathe long in that kind of air. She looked at him, the words catching her like a thorn. He added, Now your turn. She stared into the flames. Truth is, I thought vengeance would feel like peace, but it doesn't. It just burns slower. Their eyes met across the fire. Two people built from loss, sitting under a sky that had watched too many stories like theirs. A coyote cried far off. The stars burned low. The night folded around them, gentle and merciless at once. She said softly, Tomorrow, when we reach Willow March, what happens then? He answered, We finish what your father started, and maybe we stop running from ghosts. She nodded, though she didn't yet know if he meant his or hers. The wind tugged at her hair. The fire sank lower. And when he looked at her, really looked, she didn't see the outlaw anymore. She saw the man her father might have once trusted. The man who carried the weight of truth without asking anyone to share it. If this story has settled like quiet rain against your heart, stay close. The fire still burns, and the trail ahead is waiting beneath the dawn. Let your voice ride with us, so this western night remembers we were here. The sun climbed slow and wide over the ridge. Cold air turned to heat before noon. They rode in silence, the rhythm of hooves marking time between thoughts too heavy to speak. Mara's eyes kept sweeping the trail, scanning every rise and shadow. Jonah rode a few paces ahead, his shoulders broad against the horizon. She hated that she'd begun to trust the sound of his horse's steps. Steady even, like a promise the desert hadn't yet broken. By mid-morning, they reached the edge of Willow March Valley. The land dipped wide, green where the creek ran through it. Smoke curled from a cluster of shacks by the water. Beyond, a church steeple tilted in the wind. The town looked smaller than she remembered, half asleep, half ruined. Jonah slowed his horse. You still sure you want this? I didn't come this far to turn around, she said. They left the horses behind a ridge and walked the rest on foot. The trail cut through mesquite and rock. Flies hummed over a carcass in the shade. The smell of dust and whiskey drifted from the town. Jonah stopped near the old saloon. He pointed at the warped door. Inside, that's where it started. She looked at him. Where? What started? The deal? The badge? The lie that killed your father? He pushed the door open. The hinges groaned. Inside, the air was thick with stale smoke and memory. A few men drank at the far end, faces hidden under hats. The barkeep looked up once, then looked away. as if ghosts had their own business here. Jonah's voice was low. The man you want is named Pike Dalton. He was the one who took the marshal's pay after your father's death. If he's alive, he'll be here. Myra's hand brushed the butt of her revolver. Her heart pounded too loud for the quiet around them. They stepped to the bar. Jonah asked for coffee. The barkeep poured slow, eyes darting between them. Myra said, "We're looking for Pike Dalton." The barkeep froze. A small tremor ran through his hand. "Don't say that name too loud. He's got ears in every corner." "Then maybe he should hear," Jonah said. A chair scraped behind them. Two men stood from a table. One wore a long coat, the color of dried blood. His beard was gray, his eyes mean and sure. He said, "You got a short memory, Vale. I thought we buried you with the marshal's lies." Jonah didn't move. "You buried my silence, not me." Myra turned slightly, enough to see the man's hand hover near his holster. Pike Dalton. The name felt like a spark in dry grass. "You shot my father," she said. Dalton's mouth twitched. He was in the way. "Your father thought the law still meant something. He was wrong." Her breath came sharp. Jonah's hand brushed hers. A warning. "Easy," it said without sound. Dalton laughed low. "You think the truth changes anything? The frontier doesn't care who bleeds." "Maybe not," Jonah said, "but the ones who don't bleed at all should. The gunfight began before the last word died." Dalton's draw was vast, but Jonah's was cleaner. The room exploded in smoke and thunder. A bottle shattered. A man screamed. Myra dropped behind the counter, firing once, twice. Her shot caught the second outlaw square in the chest. Dalton's bullet grazed Jonah's sleeve, splintering wood, then silence. Dust hung in the sunlight like golden ash. Dalton fell backward, his gun clattering to the floor. Jonah crossed the room slow. He stood over the dying man. Dalton's breath rattled, wet and shallow. "Tell her," Jonah said. "Tell her what you did." Dalton coughed, a smear of blood on his chin. "Your father tried to stop it. The marshal wanted a story, a hero's death to clean his name. We gave it to him. The badge was bought and sold like everything else." His eyes rolled back. One last breath, then stillness. Myra stood frozen. She stared at the man who had taken her father's life and the lie that followed. The rage that had lived inside her for months began to crack, not from peace, but from exhaustion. Jonah bent and picked up the fallen badge from Dalton's coat. He placed it in her hand. "Now it's yours to bury," he said. Her fingers closed around the metal. It was cold, too light for the weight it carried. She wanted to cry, but the tears stayed behind her ribs, locked and dry. They left the saloon. The sky was wide again. The wind came up, carrying the smell of gun smoke and rain. Outside the church, Myra stopped. She knelt by a patch of wildflowers growing through the dust and laid the badge there. Her voice came quiet. "You can rest now, Pa. The truth's out." Jonah stood back, hat in hand. His shadow stretched beside hers, long in the evening light. When she rose, her eyes were softer, not healed but less haunted. "What now?" she asked. He looked east, where the sky bled into fire and dusk. "There's a ranch beyond the ridge. Water. Quiet. Maybe start there. You think I'd settle with you?" "No, but maybe you'll stop chasing me." She studied him, the corner of her mouth lifting just barely. "I don't know if I can forgive you for what came between us." "You don't have to," Jonah said. "Just don't let hate steal what your father died for." The wind caught her hair, brushing it across her cheek. He reached out without thinking, tucked it behind her ear. His fingers lingered too long. Her breath hitched, caught between fury and something dangerously close to wanting. She stepped back. He lowered his hand. Night came fast. They made camp by the creek on the edge of town. The firelight played on her face, softer now, almost peaceful. She said, "When you held my father's head that day, did he say anything?" Jonah stared into the flames. He said he was sorry. Not for dying, for leaving you angry. Her throat tightened. She looked away, eyes glimmering. The fire's reflection trembled in them like sunrise over water. Jonah's voice dropped. "Some words are too heavy for daylight. That's why I kept them for you." She nodded once, the sound of the creek filling the silence. Then she whispered, "Thank you." They sat together, close but not touching, the warmth of the fire drawing a fragile peace between them. If this story has touched a quiet ache in your heart, stay close. The wind has not yet finished what it came to carry. Your voice keeps the fire alive for the next ride beneath the western stars. The sky at dawn was pale gold, the kind of light that feels like forgiveness before the world remembers its sins. Jonah woke first. He sat by the ashes of the fire, sharpening his knife, slow and patient. Each scrape carried the rhythm of a man who'd survived by keeping busy when his thoughts turned dangerous. Mara stirred under her blanket. Her hair was loose, her face soft, with sleep she hadn't allowed herself in months. For a moment, Jonah just watched her, not out of desire, but something quieter, the kind of awe that comes when a storm finally stops hitting your roof. When she opened her eyes, he looked away. "You keep watch all night?" she asked. "Old habits. You ever stop running from ghosts, Jonah?" He smiled, faint, only when they get tired of following. She sat up, wrapped her coat around her. The creek beside camp caught the new light, turning silver between stones. For the first time, she didn't reach for the rifle right away. "What now?" she asked. "You've got choices now," Jonah said. "You can ride back, tell your story, or you can ride with me and see how deep this truth goes. You think there's more? There always is. Men like Dalton don't act alone. Someone paid for silence, someone's still paying." She studied him. "You want justice." He shook his head. "I want quiet. But sometimes you have to clear the dust before you can rest." They broke camp. The trail wound east through low hills, the grass still wet from dawn. By noon the heat rose hard, and the land shimmered like glass. Mara rode beside him now, not behind. The distance between them had changed, though neither mentioned it. She said, "You talk like a man who's tired of living, but too stubborn to stop breathing." Jonah glanced at her. "That's close enough to the truth." "And what about you?" he asked. She hesitated. "I spent so long wanting you dead, I forgot what living was supposed to feel like." Her words hung between them like dust in sunlight. They reached a bluff overlooking a dry riverbed. In the distance, an old ranch lay broken against the land. Collapsed roof, fences swallowed by sage. Jonah pointed. "We'll rest there." The ranch house creaked when they stepped inside. Dust motes floated in the light, slicing through the boards. An old saddle hung on the wall, its leather cracked but still proud. Mara walked through the silence, fingertips brushing an overturned chair. Whoever lived here left in a hurry. Jonah found a photograph half buried in the dirt. A woman and a boy in front of the same porch, smiling as if the world would never change. He handed it to Mara. She studied it. What happened to them? The West happened, he said. They built a small fire in the hearth using dry boards from a broken table. When the flames caught, the room glowed like memory. Mara sat near the warmth, the light painting her hair in bronze. Jonah watched the way she relaxed, the way her shoulders lost the weight of the trail. "You're different," he said quietly. "Since when? Since the shooting? Since the truth?" She looked into the fire. "I don't feel lighter, Jonah. I just feel empty. That's how healing starts," he said. "You have to empty before you fill." She gave a small, bitter laugh. "You sound like my father. He had some good sense in him," Jonah said. She turned her head, eyes catching his. Her voice dropped. "He liked you, didn't he?" Jonah hesitated. "Once, before everything turned wrong. What did he see in you? Maybe a man trying to be better than his mistakes." She was quiet. Then she said, "Maybe that's what I see too." The words hit deeper than either of them expected. Wind slipped through the cracks in the wall, carrying the smell of rain and distance. The light dimmed, the air thick with something unsaid. Jonah stirred the fire, his hand steady. "I'll take first watch tonight." "You should rest." She shook her head. "I'm done being the one who sleeps while others bleed." He looked at her, eyes dark and kind. "You don't owe the world another drop of blood." Her throat tightened. She didn't answer. She just moved closer to the fire, her shoulder brushing his arm. The touch was small, but it cracked something inside both of them. The sound of their breathing filled the silence. She could feel the warmth from his skin. Through the sleeve of his coat, the smell of leather and smoke wrapped around her. Jonah's voice came low. "You keep getting close to danger, Mara." "Maybe danger feels safer than being alone," she whispered. He didn't move, but his eyes softened. "You're not alone now." She turned her head. Their faces were inches apart. The air between them was warm and trembling. He reached up, slow, and brushed a strand of hair from her cheek. His touch was careful, reverent, like a man handling something sacred. Her breath caught. For a heartbeat, she thought she'd pull away. She didn't. "You should rest," he said again, voice rough. She nodded, though her eyes stayed on him. He stood, stepped away from the fire, and went to the doorway, shoulders taut. The night wind pressed against him, cool and dark. Mara lay down near the fire but didn't close her eyes. She watched his silhouette against the fading light, strong and still. Outside, thunder muttered over the horizon, the kind that promised a storm before dawn. She whispered into the dark, maybe to him, maybe to herself, "I don't hate you anymore." He didn't turn, but his hand tightened on the doorframe. For a long moment, neither spoke. The wind carried the sound of distant rain. If this story has quieted something restless in your chest, stay close. The storm hasn't passed yet, and the night still has miles to go. Your voice keeps the fire burning for the next step on this western road. Rain came before dawn, slow and steady. It hissed through the cracks in the roof, dripping onto the dirt floor in tiny silver trails. Jonah sat awake by the door, his rifle across his knees, watching the world fade behind the curtain of water. Mara stirred under her blanket. The smell of rain filled the room, clean and heavy, like the land itself was trying to forget. She sat up, eyes soft with sleep, hair tangled from the night. "How long have you been up?" she asked. "Since the thunder started." She listened. The storm's rhythm was like breathing, steady, endless. For the first time in months, she didn't feel hunted. Jonah looked at her over his shoulder. You sleep better when you know where the danger is. And when I don't, then you trust me, he said. She almost smiled. That's a tall order for a wanted man. He turned back to the rain. For a heartbeat, the silence between them felt safe. By noon, the clouds broke apart and sunlight spilled through the ruined roof. The smell of wet earth rose thick. Jonah stood, stretched, and slung his rifle over his shoulder. We'll move when the ground's dry enough, he said. Where to? North. There's an old trail that leads toward Canyon Vale. Heard talk that the marshal's still alive, hiding under a new name. Her breath caught. The same marshal who paid to kill my father? The same, Jonah said. She rose to her feet. Then that's where we ride. They saddled the horses and left the ranch behind. The land gleamed after rain, the sun painting it gold and silver. Every hoofbeat felt like a heartbeat returning to life. By late afternoon, they reached the edge of the canyon. Wind tore through the cliffs, carrying dust like smoke. Jonah dismounted, scanning the ridges above. Someone's been through here, he said. Fresh prints. 2 horses. They climbed a narrow path carved into the red rock. Halfway up, a rifle cracked. The bullet chipped the stone near Jonah's head. Down, he shouted. Myra threw herself behind a boulder. Jonah fired back once, the shot echoing down the canyon. Dust clouded the air. Another shot rang out, closer this time. They're above us, she said. Stay low, Jonah answered. I'll draw their fire. Before she could argue, he broke from cover, sprinting toward the ridge. Bullets whined off rock around him. He moved like someone who'd done this too many times to think about dying. Mara rose, heart hammering. She spotted movement on the cliff. 2 men, one aiming down, the other reloading. She steadied her rifle, exhaled, and fired. The first man dropped. Jonah's shot took the second before he could turn. The canyon fell silent again. Only the wind remained. Jonah climbed back down, breath heavy, a streak of dust across his cheek. You're getting faster, he said, and you're getting reckless. He grinned, a flash of teeth beneath the dirt. Reckless keeps you alive sometimes. She glared, but there was no anger behind it. Only fear, the kind that comes when someone you shouldn't care about almost doesn't come back. They found a shallow cave near the base of the cliff and took shelter. Mara lit a small fire. Jonah sat opposite, cleaning his rifle. The flames threw light across his face, tracing the scars like old roads. He said, You shoot like a soldier. My father taught me. He said sometimes a woman's gotta be her own law. He raised his eyes to hers. He was right. The words settled between them like warmth spreading through the cold stone. Mara watched the fire, her hand trembling slightly from the rush of the fight. Jonah noticed, reached across, and laid his palm over hers. It was a simple gesture, but it hit her harder than any bullet could have. His hand was rough, calloused, steady. Heat pulsed through her skin, climbed up her arm, into the space she'd kept locked since her father died. You don't have to be strong all the time, he said quietly. She looked up. And you don't have to be alone. He didn't answer. His thumb brushed the back of her hand once, slow, then stayed there. The fire cracked. The wind softened outside. The scent of smoke and rain mixed in the air. She felt the tension shift, not gone, just changed. What had been anger now carried something gentler, more dangerous. Jonah, she whispered. He met her eyes. You saved me back there. He smiled faintly. I was just keeping the story straight. She laughed, a sound small, uncertain, but real. He hadn't heard her laugh before. It stirred something deep in his chest. The cave grew warmer. The fire dimmed to embers. She moved closer until the distance between them was only breath. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "I don't know what this is, Jonah." "Neither do I," he said, "but it feels honest." His hand rose to her face, fingers tracing her jaw. She closed her eyes, leaning into the touch like it was the first safe thing she'd felt in years. Their foreheads met. Rain dripped outside the cave mouth, soft and slow. He could feel her heartbeat against his chest, quick and fragile. He didn't kiss her. Not yet. He just held the silence between them until it steadied. She said, "You'll break my heart if you go." He whispered, "I'll break it worse if I stay." "Then don't decide tonight." He nodded. They stayed like that, while two shadows caught in firelight, too close to lie, too afraid to hope. Outside, lightning flashed over the canyon, painting the world silver for a heartbeat before darkness swallowed it again. If this story has found a quiet place inside your chest, stay close. The storm is not done, and the dawn will demand its price. Your voice keeps the embers glowing for the next trail through the western dark. The morning after the storm was clear and cruelly bright. Dew burned off the rocks in thin ribbons of steam. Mara woke first this time. Jonah still sat by the cave mouth, head bowed, rifle across his lap, eyes half open but far away. He looked like a man who didn't believe in rest. She stood pulling her coat around her. The air smelled of iron and sage. For a long moment she just watched him, the way sunlight touched his face, softening the edges of someone she had once sworn to hate. "You think we'll find the marshal today?" she asked. Jonah lifted his gaze, slow and steady. "We'll find something. Might not be what either of us wants." He rose, stretched, and poured the last of the coffee into a tin cup. He handed it to her. Their fingers brushed. Both looked away. By the time they reached the canyon ridge, the world was wide and silent again. The trail cut north through fields of rock and brittle grass. Buzzards circled high above. Jonah pointed toward a set of cottonwoods near the bend. "There, see that smoke?" She squinted. A thin gray thread climbed from the trees. "Someone's cooking down there." He nodded. "Could be him. Could be worse." They led the horses slow until the trees closed around them. The smoke came from a small shack beside the river. The door was open, swinging with the wind. Jonah motioned for her to stay behind. He stepped inside first, gun drawn. When he came out, his face had gone still. He held up a badge, cracked, rusted, half buried in ash. "He's gone," Jonah said. "Gone. Dead. Weeks, maybe months. Whoever found him took what they needed and left the rest." Mara stared at the badge, her father's death, the chase, the truth they'd fought for. It had all led here, to an empty shack and the smell of old smoke. "So it's over," she said. Jonah looked toward the river. "For him, maybe. Not for us." The quiet broke her. All the anger, the grief, the fire that had kept her moving. It drained out of her like rain through cracked earth. She turned away, biting the inside of her lip until it hurt. Jonah stepped closer. He didn't speak. He just laid a hand on her shoulder, steady and warm. "Let it fall," he said softly. Her breath shuddered. Tears came, not violent, just heavy. They fell onto the dust at her boots. She hadn't cried since the day her father died. When it passed, she looked up at him through the blur. "You're a dangerous man, Jonah Vale." How's that? You make me feel safe. He held her gaze. That's not danger, Myra. That's hope. She almost laughed through the tears. Same thing, isn't it? He smiled faintly. Sometimes. The sun climbed higher. They built a small fire outside the shack and shared what little food they had left. Jerky, coffee, silence. After a while, she said, "What will you do now?" Jonah stared at the river. "I've got land out near Dust Creek. Nothing worth keeping but the quiet. I'll go there. And me? That's your choice." She nodded, staring into the fire. "I could ride back to town, tell them the truth, but they won't listen." "They don't need to," he said. "You know it, that's enough." She looked at him then. Really looked. The lines at the corners of his eyes, the rough beard, the way he carried his guilt like armor. "You ever think of settling, Jonah?" "I did once, a long time ago, before the world turned hard, and now." He hesitated. "Now I think maybe it takes two to make peace worth having." The air between them changed, softer, charged. She leaned forward, her voice barely a whisper. "Oh, what if I asked you to stay?" He didn't answer right away. He reached out, brushed his thumb across her cheek, tracing the salt left by tears. "Then I'd stay," he said. Her breath caught. The river whispered through the reeds. His hand slid to the back of her neck, slow, asking without words. She didn't pull away. Their lips met, hesitant at first, then certain. The kiss was not born of victory or promise, but of survival, of two souls too tired to keep pretending they didn't need warmth. The world outside the kiss disappeared. No gunfire, no graves, no lies. Just the smell of rain, the taste of smoke, the thrum of two heartbeats finding the same rhythm. When they broke apart, her forehead rested against his. "I don't know what happens after this," she whispered. "Neither do I," Jonah said. "But it feels like a beginning, not an end." They stayed there, still and close, until the fire burned down to coals and the light turned gold around them. Myra finally stood. "We should leave before nightfall." Jonah rose beside her. "You lead the way." As they rode west, the wind caught her hair, lifting it like a flag. She looked over her shoulder once, met his eyes, and for the first time since this all began, she smiled without pain. If this story has breathed warmth into a quiet corner of your soul, stay close. The fire still glows, and the night hasn't told its last secret. Your voice keeps this western flame alive for the next rise of the sun. The wind came dry and hot across the flats. The light had that kind of sharpness only the desert knows. Clean enough to hurt, bright enough to show every truth you'd rather leave buried. Jonah and Myra rode side by side, the horses' hooves sinking into dust that shimmered like memory. Neither spoke. The silence was no longer heavy, just full, like a breath they hadn't yet let go. By midday, the horizon bled into copper. A storm was forming somewhere far off, but here the sky stayed cruel and clear. Jonah slowed his horse. Ahead, a figure waited by the old telegraph post, a dark coat whipping in the wind. "You expecting company?" Myra asked. "No, but trouble travels faster than news." They stopped 20 paces out. The man lifted his head. His face was hard, familiar. Jonah muttered, "Creed." "Who's Creed?" "A bounty rider. Used to trail with me, till I stopped running for coin." Creed smiled thin, dry. "Heard you turned righteous, Jonah. Figured I'd see it myself before I collected the price on your head." Mara's hand went to her revolver. Jonah didn't move. "Let it go, Creed," he said. "There's nothing left worth fighting for." "That's where you're wrong," Creed said. "There's always gold in a man who tries to be good too late." He drew. Fast. Clean. But Jonah was faster. 2 shots cracked through the heat. Creed staggered, dropped to his knees, dust blooming around him like smoke from a dying fire. He fell forward, still. Mara dismounted, heart pounding. She stared at the body, the blood soaking into sand that had seen too much of it. "He came for you," she said. "No," Jonah answered. "He came for what I used to be." She looked up at him. "And what are you now?" He took a long breath. "Trying. That's all a man can be after he's done enough wrong." They buried Creed under a mesquite tree. Jonah carved a small cross from dry wood, same as he'd done before. Mara watched the motion of his hands. Deliberate, slow, filled with something like grace. "You do that for every man you kill?" she asked quietly. "Only the ones I still remember," he said. They rode again at dusk. The storm on the horizon had grown darker, pushing wind ahead of it. Lightning flashed far away, the kind that never reaches the ground, but lights up every shadow. They found shelter under a half-collapsed barn near an old trading post. The rain hit not long after, sheets of water turning the dust into rivers. They built a small fire from broken beams. The air smelled of smoke, sweat, and rain-soaked leather. Mara sat near the fire, hair dripping, coat clinging to her. Jonah crouched beside her, his face glowing in the light. The storm outside beat against the roof like a drum, but inside it felt almost still. "You ever think about going back?" she asked. "Back where? To before, to when life didn't hurt so much." Jonah looked at her, eyes steady. "Every day. But a man can't walk backward and call it living." She nodded, gaze falling to the fire. The heat rose against her face, softening the cold in her chest. He said, "You keep looking at the flames like they're saying something." "Maybe they are," she murmured. "What do you hear?" "That I don't hate you anymore." Jonah froze, the firelight flickering in his eyes. "That's something," he said. She smiled. "Faint and tired, don't get ahead of yourself. I still don't trust you completely." "You shouldn't," he said. "Trust takes time." She leaned back against a post, closing her eyes. Rain hammered harder. The sound of it was like a heartbeat over their silence. When she spoke again, her voice was soft. "You could have let Creed kill you. Would have been easier." "Easier isn't peace," Jonah said. He moved closer, sat beside her. The warmth between them was more than fire now, a quiet pull neither wanted to name. Mara opened her eyes. The firelight danced on her skin, gold against the storm. "You ever wonder," she said, "if some souls are meant to find each other, just to learn what breaking feels like?" Jonah looked into her eyes. "If that's true, then maybe we're meant to learn how to heal too." She exhaled, slow and deep. "You talk like a preacher sometimes." "Only because I've been damned enough to know the difference," he said. Her laugh was soft, trembling. She reached for his hand without thinking. He didn't pull away. Their fingers laced, rough, uncertain, alive. The wind pushed harder against the walls. Lightning lit the room in white flashes. Mara turned her face toward him. He met her halfway. This time, the kiss wasn't hesitant. It was the kind that happens when the past stops breathing, and the present finally does. Her hand slid to his jaw, his to her waist. The taste of rain lingered on her lips. When they broke apart, the storm had softened. Jonah leaned his forehead against hers. His voice was low, rough as gravel. "We don't owe the world this moment, Myra. Let it be ours." She nodded. "Just for tonight." They lay beside the fire, close but not tangled, the kind of nearness that spoke louder than words. Outside, thunder rolled away into distance, leaving behind only the whisper of rain. She whispered before sleep took her, "You make the world quiet, Jonah." And he answered, barely above breath, "So do you." If this story has kindled something gentle in your chest, stay close. The night still breathes, and the fire remembers your warmth. Your voice keeps the western night alive for the next dawn that waits beyond the storm. The dawn after the storm was clean and cold. Mist drifted from the fields, wrapping the barn in silver breath. The world felt new, but neither Jonah nor Mara trusted new things anymore. She woke first. Jonah slept on his side near the dying fire, hat over his face, the soft rasp of his breathing blending with the whisper of the rain outside. She studied him in the quiet. The man she had hunted now looked almost peaceful. The lines around his mouth had softened, his jaw unguarded. She rose, pulling her coat around her shoulders, stepping into the morning chill. Outside, the land shimmered under low fog. The horses grazed by the fence. Beyond them, the world stretched wide, endless, like a chance she didn't yet know how to take. Jonah came out a moment later, rifle slung across his back. His eyes were tired, but clear. "You left me my watch again," he said. "You needed the sleep more than I did." He smiled faint. "That's dangerous talk for a woman who used to point a gun at my spine." "Maybe I'm learning mercy," she said. "Or maybe you're learning truth." The quiet between them deepened. Then Mara asked, "Where does a man like you go when there's nothing left to run from?" Jonah looked toward the east, where the sun bled through clouds. "Home, if I can find what that means." "You think you will?" He took a slow breath. "Maybe not, but I'd like to try." They rode out as the sun climbed higher. The road curved through a valley, green from the rain. Every mile felt lighter than the last. By midday, they reached the edge of Dust Creek, a wide, shallow river cutting through the hills. An old bridge spanned the water, half rotten, swaying with the wind. Jonah stopped his horse. Across the river stood a man in a black duster, rifle in hand, waiting. "Marshal Hale." The words came out quiet, heavy. Mara's stomach turned cold. "I thought he was dead," she said. "He was supposed to be," Jonah answered. "Guess some lies don't die easy," the marshal called out, voice sharp as iron. "You've cost me more than gold, Vale. Come down here and pay what's owed." Jonah's jaw tightened. "I paid the day your men shot an innocent lawman to cover your greed." The marshal's eyes flicked to Mara. "And you, girl, you should be thanking me. That father of yours would have dragged you down, same as him." Mara's hand went to her revolver. "You talk about him again, I'll show you how he raised me." The marshal laughed, low and cruel. "You think you're killers now? You're nothing but ghosts chasing ghosts." Jonah nudged his horse forward, stopping just short of the bridge. "You wanted a story, Marshal? Here's the end of it." The man raised his rifle. Jonah drew. The sound cracked like thunder across the valley. 2 shots, then silence. The marshal stumbled, eyes wide, a red bloom spreading across his chest. He dropped to his knees, mouth opening, but no words came out. His rifle fell into the dirt. Mara dismounted and ran forward. Jonah was still in the saddle, smoke curling from his revolver, his breathing steady but ragged. She looked up at him. It's done, Jonah. He stared at the body. No, it's paid. That's different. She stepped closer, her hand on his boot. Come down, Jonah. Please. He dismounted slow, boot sinking into the mud by the bridge. The river below whispered through the stones like an old hymn. He stared at the marshal's badge lying in the water, the current carrying it away. You can let it go now, she said. Jonah looked at her, really looked, and for the first time, his eyes held no fight, just relief. Quiet and fragile. Maybe you're right. Maybe the past can drown. She took his hand. He didn't pull away. The wind moved through the grass, cool and forgiving. What will you do now? She asked. He smiled, small and weary. Maybe build something that doesn't need a gun to keep standing. And me? That's your choice. Her hand stayed in his. I've made it, Jonah. Wherever you go, that's where I'm riding. His fingers tightened around hers. Then I reckon we both found home. The river rolled on, carrying the last badge, the last lie, the last ghost of what they'd been. The sky cleared to blue, wide and clean. They saddled up again and rode west into the sunlight. The land stretched before them, raw, empty, alive. For the first time in a long time, Jonah felt the weight lift. The sound of her horse beside his was steady, like two heartbeats finding the same rhythm at last. If this story has left a trail of warmth through your heart, stay close. The road still calls, and the wind carries more than endings. Your voice keeps this western fire burning toward the light that waits in the final dawn. The sun fell slow over Dust Creek, painting the world in gold and ash. The day had been long, but quiet. The kind of quiet that comes after a storm, when the land exhales and the heart finally keeps time with it. Jonah and Mara made camp near the edge of a dry meadow. The river hummed nearby, soft as memory. He gathered wood. She built the fire. They moved in rhythm, wordless, like they'd been doing it for years. When the flames rose, Mara sat cross-legged, watching the light catching Jonah's eyes. The air smelled of smoke, horses, and the sweet damp of night coming on. She said, "You ever think the land forgives us, Jonah?" He looked into the fire a long moment. The land doesn't forgive or condemn. It just keeps going. It waits for us to learn how to do the same. She smiled faintly. That sounds like something my father would have said. He poked at the fire with a stick. Maybe I listened more to him than he knew. The silence that followed wasn't heavy, just full. She studied him in the glow. The roughness softened, the eyes quieter, the man she had chased now sitting like a promise made good. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. You could settle here, build that ranch you talked about. Maybe, but only if someone made it worth staying for. She tilted her head. You fishing for an invitation, cowboy? Maybe I already got one. Her laugh was low, quiet, almost shy. It had been so long since either of them remembered what laughter felt like. The stars came out slow, one by one, until the sky was thick with them. The fire burned lower. Jonah said, "When I first met you, I saw anger in your eyes. Now I see something else. What's that?" "Light." She looked away, the words hitting deep. Then she reached out, her fingers brushing his wrist. His hand turned, caught hers. The simple contact said what words never could. She whispered, "I spent months chasing the man I thought killed my father. Turns out I was chasing the part of myself that couldn't forgive." Jonah's thumb traced the back of her hand. "Then let that part rest. It's done." A breeze stirred through the grass, lifting the smell of wild sage. The sound of the river drifted closer, gentle, endless. Mara moved nearer, her shoulder touching his. Their foreheads met, eyes closed, the fire painting their faces in amber and shadow. The world narrowed to breath and heartbeat, and the warmth of another soul beside their own. He whispered, "You sure about this life? It's quiet. It's hard. It's small." She smiled against his jaw. "After everything we've been through, quiet sounds like mercy." He kissed her then, slow, tender, full of every unspoken promise between them. It wasn't fire anymore. It was home. When they pulled apart, she rested her head against his chest. The rhythm of his heart was steady beneath her ear. The fire cracked softly, throwing sparks into the night. Jonah said, "Maybe that's what forgiveness is. Not forgetting. Just stopping the hurt from running the trail ahead of you," she murmured. "Then I guess we're forgiven." They sat that way until the flames sank to embers and the stars leaned closer, crowding the sky with light. At dawn, they broke camp. The morning air was cool, sweet with new grass. The horses snorted, eager for the trail. Jonah tightened the saddle straps while Mara filled the canteens. When they rode out, the sun rose behind them, turning the world gold again. Half a mile from the creek, Jonah looked back. The smoke from their fire climbed straight and thin into the sky, a line between what had been and what was left to build. Mara reached for his hand where their horses rode close. Their fingers met, stayed. He said, "Guess the outlaw's whisper finally found some peace." And she answered, "Guess my hatred turned into something worth keeping." They rode on, two silhouettes moving west, the land wide open before them, the light new and endless. If this story has touched a quiet place in your heart, let its warmth linger. The fire we've built together can burn long after the trail fades. Comment, share, and stay with us, so this western flame keeps living for every soul still listening beneath the wide frontier sky.